So, just due to time restraints, I know I'm not going to be able to quote all these scholars, but I'm going to name them off if Carlos Xavier brings them up for any reason. What I mean, not them up, but Matthew 24:34 up. It says, "This generation shall not pass away until all these things take place." So, this generation, Carlos thinks this generation is talking about a future generation, not talking to the generation that he was talking to. But all Jesus's times he uses the word "this generation" or the phrase "this generation," he's always talking to his contemporaries. He's talking about old covenant Israel who has backslid and who is about to crucify him, and he's putting judgment upon that generation. And so I'm going to give you a number of different scholars that just proves my point. And this goes back not to modern scholars who are really fueled by dispensationalist futurist theology, but these are guys from way back in the days. I'm going to give you one, Henry Hammond, 1653. Yeah, that's when he wrote this. He says, I now assure you that in the age of some that are now alive, shall all that has been said in this chapter be certainly fulfilled. So that's how he quotes Jesus in Matthew chapter 24, verse 34. John Lightfoot, 1658, yes, the year 1658. He says, hence it appears plain enough that the foregoing verses are not to be understood of the last judgment, but as we said, of the destruction of Jerusalem. There were some among the disciples who lived to see the things come to pass, according to Matthew 16:28. And compare John 21 and 22. And there were some rabbins alive at the time when Christ spoke these things and lived until the city was destroyed. So just to quote Henry Hammond first, it's a paraphrase and annotations upon all the books of the New Testament, briefly explaining all the difficult places thereof. So that one's in 1653 of Hammond. The second quote is from John Lightfoot, a commentary on the New Testament from the Talmud in Hebraica, volume 4. So that was written in 1658. Here's another one, Philip Doddridge of 1750. He says, verily I say unto you, and urge you to observe it as absolutely necessary in order to understand what I have been saying, that this generation of men now living shall not pass until all these things be fulfilled. For what I have foretold concerning the destruction of the Jewish state is near at hand, that some of you shall live to see it all accomplished with a dreadful exactness. And that one is the Family Exposition, or paraphrase and version of the New Testament with critical notes and a practical improvement, each section, 6 volumes. So that's another scholar from the 1750s. Thomas Newton, 1755, says, it is to me a wonder how any man can refer part of the foregoing discourse to the destruction of Jerusalem and part of the end of the world or any other distant event when it is said so positively here in the conclusion, all these things shall be fulfilled in this generation. And that's his book, Dissertations on the Prophecies, which have remarkably been fulfilled at the time, are fulfilling in the world. And that one is from Thomas Newton in the year 1755. You might say, oh, those guys are all old. Well, I'll just give you a couple other ones that are modern scholars, just so you know nothing has changed among scholarship. Now, I know I don't consider these people authoritative, only in fact that they've studied the original New Testament Greek over and over again. And I'm just showing you that I believe exactly what Jesus says, when he said it, and why he said it. But this is just to confirm what I'm saying. It's not something that is for the ignorant or something like that, like some futurists would want to say. I'll just give you N.T. Wright, 2004. He says, all this is spoken to Jesus' disciples so they will know when the cataclysmic events are going to happen. Watch for the leaves on the tree, and you can tell it's nearly summer. Watch for these events, and you'll know that the great event, the destruction of the temple and Jesus' complete vindication, are just around the corner. And be sure of this, says Jesus, and Matthew wants you to underline this, it will happen within a generation. That is an extra important reason why everything that has been said in the passage so far must be taken to refer to the destruction of Jerusalem and the events that surround it. Only when we appreciate how significant that moment was for everything Jesus has said, done, will be understood what Jesus himself stood for. So that's N.T. Wright, 2004. It's called Matthew for Everyone, Part 2, Chapter 16 through 28. I'll give you another one. F.F. Bruce, 1983. The phrase, "this generation," is found too often on Jesus' lips in a literal sense for us to suppose that it certainly takes on a different meaning in the saying we are now examining. Moreover, if the generation of the end time had been intended, that generation would have been a more natural way of referring to than this generation. So, just so you know, this generation is the proper Greek construction for that specific generation. D.A. Carson, 1984. This generation can only, with greatest difficulty, be made to mean anything other than the generation living when Jesus spoke. And so that one in D.A. Carson is Matthew, the Expositor's Bible Commentary. And that one is in 1984. The previous one, F.F. Bruce, is in 1983, is The Hard Sayings of Jesus. The Hard Sayings of Jesus in 1983. All right, that's just a few. I got a lot more, but I don't want to bog this video with too much time, okay? This generation was Jesus's contemporaries. Okay, God bless.